This is a Course in Miracles. It is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. The course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. This course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Chapter 13, The Guiltless World. Section 9, The Cloud of Guilt. Paragraph 1. Guilt remains the only thing that hides the Father, for guilt is the attack upon his Son. The guilty always condemn, and having done so, they will still condemn, linking the future to the past, as is the ego's law. Fidelity to this law lets no light in, for it demands fidelity to darkness and forbids awakening. The ego's laws are strict, and breaches are severely punished. Therefore, give no obedience to its laws, for they are laws of punishment. And those who follow them believe they are guilty, and so they must condemn. Between the future and the past, the laws of God must intervene if you would free yourself. Atonement stands between them, like a lamp, shining so brightly that the chain of darkness in which you bound yourself will disappear.
Before we even start into this, I wanted to let's talk about guilt. Guilt is culpability, meaning I did something real. Mm-hmm. And if I did something real, there has to be recompense. There has to be compensation somehow.
Right.
So, and in this, I think that it could be confusing to someone to hear that no one can be guilty of anything.
Right.
So I just want to offer that even in this world, I like to try to ground the concepts even in our 3D reality here. Can a 1-year-old be guilty of anything? Can a 3-year-old be guilty if they accidentally shoot a gun and kill somebody? Can they be guilty? Can they be held guilty in a court of law? They can't be. No. It's not possible. How about an 11-year-old? At what age does the court begin to recognize even the ability to be culpable? And even in then, it's degrees. I think I've heard of 16-year-olds that can be held guilty.
Right.
So I'm saying is even in our world, here, the 3D so-called illusion, we recognize that guilt is only possible if you know what you're doing.
Right. Well, the only thing I can say to this is that my part is not to condemn what I am looking at, what I think has happened, what appears to be something that requires punishment because of the laws of the world, which is based on a past-future reference. What I need to do is look on it and immediately, particularly when it gets really, really close to home. Let's say, a child is kidnapped or something like that. It's your child. You're going to want retribution for those kinds of things because you're so attached to the child and somebody needs to pay for what's happened.
This is saying here that guilt is not possible.
Right. It's saying, guilt is not possible. We can't mix levels. Guilt is not possible in the realm of God, where Father and Son are, and we are a son of God. So guilt is not possible there.
So that means that the world here has a certain reality to it.
Yes, it does.
And the guilt that's here is punishable.
Well,
so we're living. That's the schizo mind.
It is the schizo mind because bodies can sin, so to speak. But because a body is not real, nothing has really happened. That is what's so odd because we're experiencing ourselves in a body, in a world. So
the ego's laws are strict.
yeah.
And breaches are severely punished. That's line 4.
Yes.
Therefore, give no obedience to its laws, for they are laws of punishment. What are the laws of the ego? What laws is it referring to? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you right now.
Well, I mean, obviously we have all kinds of laws, and we have prisons, and we have systems to
the ego, the egoic thought system.
Mm-hmm.
What's the law of the egoic thought system? One is seek and never find.
Attack and defend.
Yeah, that the whole world is attack and defend.
Yes. So if I defend myself, I'm attacked. If I attack somebody,
and that there is no innocence.
It is a form of defense. Then I am going to be attacked. So what I give out as projection and reflection here, it will reflect back.
Also, the body can be guilty.
The body can experience...
In this world, the body can be guilty.
The body can experience guilt. The body can, in its mind, experience...
In the egoic system.
Yeah, in the egoic system. But it's trying to make us wake up to who we really are. So, obviously, the ego's world is based on, attack and defend. If somebody does something unto me, then they deserve it. It's the eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, the Old Testament. It's not a loving and forgiving world to the ego. The ego will have its way. Not only on that other, but as long as I believe that everything must be punished, it also has to be punishable upon me. So I think it says the guilty always condemn, and have done so, they will still condemn, linking the future to the past, as is the ego's law. So that is another thing, is that the ego's law has to link the future to the past. It's never in the present. It's never in the now.
My way of looking at that is that the now is, I'm going to call it the transcendent third place, because there is no now here. You can feel it.
Yeah.
What I've said is already gone. What I have not said is not here.
Mm-hmm.
So to live in a now, it's a space of nothingness between the past and the future. And it's saying in between those two, I must insert God's law. In other words, now.
Yes.
And God's law is not time-space.
It's not time-space. So whenever there is a situation where you want to condemn, where you think retribution is the only way, it's asking you again to suspend so that God can answer in a loving way. Because if I don't suspend and leave that space between past and future by calling on the Holy Spirit, it will be a repeat over and over and over again. It's a cycle of attack, defend, attack, punish, guilt, punishment. And so you can't get out of that loop once you're put into it.
If you are in a future-past orientation, by definition, you're in the time-space continuum that we're in here. That would be the ego's world. And if that's where you are, then there is guilt. And as long as I'm in a past and in a future, there's no way to escape guilt.
Right.
And that would be, I am completely a subject of the ego's laws. And it says, don't listen to the ego's laws.
Right.
So it's suggesting that at the moment of choice, at that second that I have the chance of putting my faith in something, do I put my faith in what I'm seeing and what I have the ability to know here? Mm-hmm. Or am I putting my faith in something unseen and I'm inviting in that transcendent third?
Right.
In other words, it's asking here to not make a choice in the ego's world with the ego's laws. That means this idea of guilt and innocence does not function here. No one is found guilty or innocent in our plane of experience, sensate. Everyone's guilty. That's the law of this place.
Oh, right. I see what you're saying.
We're all guilty. Guilt is built into this place.
Yeah.
So that when I get into the moment of choice, I'm making a decision of whether I'm casting my lots with the ego's laws or God's laws. And God's laws insert themselves in a space where there is none. It's a timeless space between the past and the future. Here. It doesn't happen here. So suddenly, when I find myself being seduced by an opportunity to either blame myself or blame someone else, even as a general condition of my life, I mean, it's like, how did I get here? Well, you made a bunch of mistakes. You did.
Right.
Again, what is culpability? What is guilt? Well, we live in it. It's just, how bad are we affected by it? It's varying degrees. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And there are all these lessons that say, I'm sinless, I am guiltless, or, it's throughout this to help you remember who you really are. And so long as I want to play the game of guilt and condemn, I will be condemned, because I actually create the path. I create the future just like the past again. So every time I feel as though punishment is justified, and and therefore it must be, meted out that way, I have bought into the ego's laws, and I'm going to live by those ego's laws.
Well, my point in saying what I said is that what you're saying, it's just part of living here. In other words, there's no escaping that problematic choice that has to be made of punishing someone. And so that when I find myself called into that moment, and in a sense, you have to, according to the Course in Miracles, make my decisions, make my faith for a world that doesn't exist here.
Right. Yeah.
So in other words, those things can't be concluded here.
Right. And that's where the miracle comes in.
Because there can be the level confusion where you say, well, the guy did X, Y, Z. I don't think he should hang because nobody's guilty here. There has to be a clear distinction between what we mean by guilt and what we mean by innocence and these things. Anyway.
And we don't know. Okay, so I'm just going to play out a scenario where I believe that somebody is guilty, and there's been enough evidence that, something happened. It was an attack against me or my property or something, and I think there needs to be justification for, some kind of retribution and everything else. The Course is saying suspend your judgment about what you think happened, because it's possible that the whole scenario that I thought happened gets solved in a way that could only happen if I leave the space for the miracle, for God to intervene in my dream world, for that space of nowness to come in and heal the past in the future. So we think that everything happens, that there's a cause and effect, and there's a cause and effect. But like when you prayed for that woman who was missing, and it was a Schrodinger's cat moment.
Right.
My understanding is that if we suspend our judgment on the situation that we think that we're in, a different outcome can come through that was not in my mindscape at all about what really happened.
Well, and that would be the role of the healer. So let's say someone does, break my picture window and take a bunch of stuff, and they go away, and they really did it, and it's not like, is that it's important for me to try to, to suspend my judgment about what's happening.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you don't go through the paperwork. It doesn't mean whatever, but you suspend your judgment about what needs to happen.
Right. Let me learn to give as I receive. So I suspend my judgment in that situation so that, as you said, another thing can happen.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean that the person doesn't get punished, doesn't go to jail, doesn't do this, doesn't pay back. I don't know what happens.
Right. I don't know either. So, I mean, that's what I think. And so we have to leave that space as best that we can to say, I want to see this another way. And those are some of the most trying moments, because if there's something that's happening right to the personal, either the body or the property or children or, a loved one, you want to have, revenge or whatever. You want justification for whatever needs to be happening.
And that's the ego's invitation to join its world.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it will perpetuate the nightmare continuously so long as we want to play that. That's just the way it works.
Paragraph 2. Release from guilt is the ego's whole undoing. Make no one fearful, for his guilt is yours. And by obeying the ego's harsh commandments, you bring its condemnation on yourself, and you will not escape the punishment it offers those who obey it. The ego rewards fidelity to it with pain, for faith in it is pain, and faith can be rewarded only in terms of the belief in which the faith was placed. Faith makes the power of belief, and where it is invested determines its reward. For faith is always given what is treasured, and what is treasured is returned to you. So the ego's promise is that I will have a certain type of cause-effect. If I will see the guilty arraigned in court. I will see punishments meted out. I will, get just, an ambulance chasing thing where I make $7 million for, whatever, stubbing my toe or something. And, so that there's this sense of like getting something in a sort of an economy. And that's all that justice can be here. And that's all that the ego wants, is to participate in that sort of economics of relationship.
Yeah.
And the Course in Miracles is saying that's an act of faith. I'm making an act of faith in the egoic law.
Right. It's what you're valuing.
But I have to recognize that there is another act of faith that can be made that turns its back on that seduction. It's a seduction because you want to see him hang, at some level, in some situations. Right. You want to see this thing happen. And we talked about in the last one about how long are you going to keep your arch fiends of history in the rogues gallery, right? For us to project guilt onto forever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we bring them out, we drag them out. I saw more Hitler movies just came out recently. Right. It's like this guy is the gift that keeps on giving. Mm-hmm. In terms of having someone to hang guilt on.
Yes. If anybody asks who's in hell, well, Hitler's in hell. We don't know that. But right. There you go.
So there was a line in here. The ego rewards fidelity to it with pain. Make no one fearful, for his guilt is yours, and by obeying the ego's harsh commandments, you bring its condemnation, and you will not escape the punishment it offers. The ego rewards fidelity. And faith can be rewarded only in the terms of the belief in which the faith was placed. Faith can be rewarded in terms of the belief in which the faith was placed. So there are rewards for placing faith in the ego's world and in God's world.
Well, the reward is going to be, if you want punishment, then you can expect that you can have punishment in your own life.
Well,
that's the way it works.
And the ego's reward will always be, yes, you will see that guy hang, but you won't know what the blowback is until it hits you in the face.
Yeah, until somebody does the same to you for something.
Right, that's the ego's world, is there will be something around the corner. Mm-hmm. There's something hidden in this bargain. There's always a hidden caveat.
Yes. I'm just going to go back to the very beginning. Release from guilt is the ego's whole undoing. That's important. Release from guilt. That means release from guilt of the other and release from my own guilt. Make no one fearful, for his guilt is yours, and by obeying the ego's harsh commandments, you bring its condemnation on yourself, and you will not escape the punishment it offers those who obey it. It has in italics, make no one fearful. And I think it's worth emphasizing because when you're asking yourself what you should be up to in a situation and whether or not it's the right action, this has to do with, when catastrophic things are happening, or even, a child runs to you and, it looks like now they fell and they broke their arm or their leg or something. And the thing of it is you don't buy into and bring on more fear to the situation as much as possible. Whatever it is, And that includes like making sure a person is fed, making sure people are comfortable and things like that. But particularly when there's loss or, somebody is really starving, it doesn't matter if you know that this world isn't real. If someone believes that the world is real and they require something, that's why it says give, the coat off your back of your enemy if they think that they need it, or even a stranger on the street, because they are afraid. And if you are going to amplify their fear by fighting them or whatever it is, that we've actually fed into the ego story. So every time something happens, it's a good thing to ask myself, by responding to this in this way, am I going to make myself or that other person more fearful? This relates to your health situations as well. If a person thinks that they need to have, radiation therapy to take care of their cancer, even if I've done the research and says, maybe not, then it's not going to help for me if they believe that that is the way that they have to go. All I can do is stand by that person and help them through their process. You can't amplify people's fears.
There's another way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
There's, another way to look at it is that this place, I go back to this place, those egos' land of 3 dimensions, and
mm-hmm.
is built out of fear.
It is, absolutely.
So the idea of lessening fear
mm-hmm.
in that realm is ludicrous. There's no way to lessen fear here. I know what you're saying, and it's a point well taken, but to not be confused of what the Course is actually saying in terms of making fearful. The only way to make something fearful is to sentence it into being a body here.
Mm-hmm.
So when there's the hungry people, there's the needy circumstances, the things that you're talking about, alleviating those pains and fears
mm-hmm.
and difficulties, I'm going to say that the Course isn't really addressing that, because that's a complicated, in-the-moment issue. But what it is saying is, when I am addressing a situation, I see it in front of me, do not condemn the players to being bags of meat acting out their drama in the world, and don't join in that drama with them.
Yes.
So whatever that means, do I make them a sandwich? Do I give some money? Do I participate in the
mm-hmm.
disaster relief? Or whatever it is that I do to, let's say, alleviate fear. Don't be fooled thinking that I can rush in there with physical means and truly alleviate fear.
Well, that's true, yeah. Because
the only way I can alleviate fear is to not make any of the people fearful, and that means to not sentence them into being prisoners in their physical situation.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that has to do with, like, the priest who smacked the little girl across the face when she was having a fit.
No, okay.
Because that was it just flashed into my mind, and you might want to tell that story, because did he alleviate the fear? And it's possible that he did. in real
life, what
way.
happened? What happened was, I was in kindergarten, and it's the priest. There's a lady, a girl there. Her name is Dorothy, and her mom couldn't pull her away from the pole. It was down in a basement, and her mother is pulling her away from the pole to put her in her desk or her little seat in kindergarten. And Dorothy was screaming. Her face was as red as a tomato, and she was crying and screaming. It was an absolute temper tantrum. And the priest, the pastor of the parish, though he would be in jail for this now, but I'm going to tell the story. He goes, honey, stop. We come to school, do this. And he tried this about 3 times. Then he wound up, and the girl was just screaming. She wasn't hearing anything. He smacked her across the face, and she immediately goes, just sucked in all tears, sucked in all emotion. She's got this look on her face, and she was in shock. And her mother let go of her, and she let go of the pole, and she became a good little student. It's St. Augustine.
I don't know if this applies, but I recognize that in a way, her clinging was the thing that she was so afraid of letting go, like of her mother. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was a shocking thing. Whenever I think of that story, I'm going, sometimes we do just need to wake up. Somebody needs to pour the cold water over your head and say, stop, you're making it worse. But I don't know what the Course really...
Well, there would be many ways to solve the problem. That was the one we did in 1962 or 61. And it worked. Worked, quotes. However, all I'm going to say is that all solutions, whether it's making a sandwich for someone or doing disaster relief or smacking a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old to get them to, sit in their chair, whatever we do, those are all specific to a context, a time, a place, a skill level, an understanding. And there's no rights or wrongs there. It's just stuff coming down based on who these people are in those moments. The Course is actually going beyond that. So it's a more general view.
Right.
Do not make fearful.
Yeah.
Arguably, I'm not going to argue that the priest was making things less fearful or more. I'll tell you what, it solved a lot of problems in a real short amount of time. But I'm sure there were other ways to do it. It doesn't matter. That's a relative circumstance. And if we get into weighing that out, just like weighing out disaster relief or the things you're talking about, it does drag us away from not sentencing people into being skin bags.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a very, very good point. And so therefore, don't buy into the drama of the other, because then I'm brought all the way in again into that. Okay. So I'm going to read paragraph 3. The world can give you only what you gave it. For being nothing but your own projection, it has no meaning apart from what you found in it and placed your faith in. Be faithful unto darkness, and you will not see, because your faith will be rewarded as you gave it. You will accept your treasure, and if you place your faith in the past, the future will be like it. Whatever you hold dear, you think is yours. The power of your valuing will make it so.
I think the understanding the power of your valuing will make it so is an important principle of the Course in Miracles, is to understand, to do some meditation on value and what is of value. And it gets into sort of these yogic practices of looking at the world and recognizing that things come and go, just to become aware of what we're talking about here and what real value is. What's the real value? Is it a picnic with no ants? Do the presence of ants really make a picnic better or worse? And then,
friend of mine, a certain amount of money in the bank account, is that's where my security is? Is that what it is? We need to see what's on our altars for, what I think will save me here. Because usually there's some sort of saving of self.
Right. This comes up, it's actually come up several times. A friend of mine one time in Boulder said, that he had a prayer out. It says, please, Lord, he was putting a deck onto their master bedroom. Says, please, Lord, let this just be a deck. Oh. In other words, let it not be a lesson. Oh, yeah. Let it not be a spiritual journey
yes.
of forgiveness.
That's a good point. No, there's many things that's a good prayer. I agree with that.
Paragraph 4. Atonement brings reevaluation of everything you cherish, for it is the means by which the Holy Spirit can separate the false and the true, which you have accepted into your mind without distinction. Therefore you cannot value one without the other, and guilt has become as true for you as innocence. You do not believe the Son of God is guiltless, because you see the past, and see him not. When you condemn a brother, you are saying, I, who was guilty, choose to remain so. You have denied his freedom, and by so doing you have denied the witness unto yours. You could as easily have freed him from the past, and lifted from his mind the cloud of guilt that binds him to it, and in his freedom would have been your own. Okay, there's some heavy stuff here that, again, you'd want to go into because it's talking about freedom. And let's say I've got, because I'm a certain kind of a thing, and I believe that there's a class of people who are manipulating our futures here. I gave a bunch of people a big spiel on that last night, that, I think that we give ourselves too much credit for having choice here, and that we don't really often make choices. It's like we're victims of programming. We're, like when women are shown, women should not smoke. Well, in the Victorian era, women didn't smoke. But then in the movies, when Lauren Bacall makes a cigarette look very, very sexy, then women start smoking cigarettes. We're in a sense victimized by the stuff that goes through our heads. So it says, but we're talking about a freedom here. A freedom from, I who was guilty choose to remain so. Condemn a brother, you were saying. Okay, I'm going to end up chopping out a bunch of this stuff. Therefore, you cannot value one without the other, and guilt has become as true for you as innocence. We don't have innocence here. If there's guilt and innocence are of the same ilk, the only place where there's truly innocence is in the mind of God.
Right.
In this world here, the reason I dragged in Edward Bernays and social programming is that I believe in this world there are people who are guilty of the hells we experience here in the world. Are they guilty or not? Should they be culpable or not? Should they be allowed to run roughshod over society or not?
Well, since all of it is a projection of my dream in my world, somehow my belief system is helping to keep them alive to do exactly what you're saying over and over again. So it's up to me, once I start to awaken, to say that I am a holy son of God himself. I cannot suffer, I cannot be in pain, and I cannot help but do all that salvation asks, which means that I'm not buying into their stuff. Now, it helps to understand the way this world works, the hall of mirrors, or the shifting,
the shell game.
The shell game where things are under, and so where is it now? Where is it now that's coming at me? So that I can understand what I'm looking at. But beyond that, as I devalue the world as in something I need to fix, hold on to, change, etc., the only thing that it's asking me to do is change my mind.
Well, and I'm going to say that answering my own question, because that's a real one for me, is that I could fall into a sort of a trap of seeing that me or us or, the common person is a victim of this cabal of people, of entities, corporations, or whatever they are. And it's recognizing that I'm keeping all of us in bondage if that's where I operate from. And if I put faith in, the miracle that transcends scale, so even the small miracles, big miracles are all the same. I actually have agency to heal that cabal, that situation, to whatever degree it's real or not.
It says our outer world changes.
But my agency is by inviting in the Holy Spirit and going through the forgiveness process.
Right.
So that's really the only tool I have. I can't do anything about Edward Bernays. I can't do anything about Madison Avenue. I can't do anything about Nike. I can't do anything about any of these people.
Yeah.
But as you said, it also doesn't help me to deny that those things may exist to a degree. In other words, once I'm a bloodhound on that particular trail, whether it's true or whether it's false, it requires completion by me.
Yeah. Well, so that you can let it go.
Right. But letting it go doesn't say, well, it's, you're making up stuff and it doesn't really exist. That's not what this is about.
Right.
It's about forgiveness.
It is about forgiveness, and it's about forgiving the world that you see that can cause, pain, suffering, slavery, deception, and everything else. And when I forgive that world that I see, as the Course says, the journey's already been done. It's all already happened. I like to look at it like I'm somehow experiencing my world on a record player, and I'm living people can say, well, I'm living different lives on it and everything else. But the thing of it is that it's built off of the same kind of program over and over and over again. And the only way that I can get off that wheel of experience of condemnation or attack and projection and everything else is to say, okay, I'm going to leave this situation to see it another way by inviting in the Holy Spirit, trying to keep my own countenance, not to get riled up by every little thing that comes at me, but, being more and more stable internally so that God can come along and just pick up the needle and get it off of the darn record player so that I can see clearly. It's a moment. It might go back down or whatever, but that's my choice at that point, to continue to play the game in which I have invited myself into. This is something here.
Well, and fear is the invitation.
Yeah.
Fear is the invitation to play. You get this, and because when fear comes in, it says, if you don't do anything, nothing's going to happen. If you don't do this,
right.
If you don't prepare, if you don't protect yourself, if you don't attack, if you don't do something, then you're caught. And you want to be, the Course is saying, I want to be freed from that cycle.
Right.
Which really bears no fruit. There's really no answer.
Right.
In attack
and
defend.
usually you can see it mostly in your most, say, close and intimate relationships. People, in this period of time, people go through relationships over and over and over again. But we're not recognizing when the inner change actually happens with us is when the outer kind of change with the type of relationship I'm in with somebody else changes also. Usually we think, if I could just get out of this one and it will be better and I will do this. And you find out that your boss replaces it, your kid replaces that thing, whatever it is. Those same emotions come up and you're experiencing the same thing all over again because removing yourself from it, you haven't changed your mind about
right. No,
what you
in the
think
play
happened.
of consciousness, you can it's the shell game.
Yeah.
That if you get rid of the problem you had with a boss, or if I get rid of the problem I had with the New World Order, or if somebody gets rid of the problem they had with their child, it's going to resurface again in another form because it's actually something that's internal.
Yeah, and it has to do with my beliefs and what I value about how I think the world needs to work for me.
Yeah, so the question then, and the Course addresses this very clearly in other places, but it's implied by what you're talking about, is are the thoughts in my head shaping, is the world that comes at me shaping my thoughts? Mm-hmm. That's what I think. Or are my thoughts shaping the world I see? And that's what the Course in Miracles says. My thoughts are actually shaping that world I see. And that's a willingness to invest in fear, a willingness to invest in separate objects that are having agency on each other as physical objects bumping into each other, and that's where I let it go. And right. I don't try to escape from that. I don't try to do the transcendent third. I don't request the way out.
Yeah, another way of looking at it, and that's what has to happen. And I also just want to address that when it says here, I who was guilty choose to remain so. You have denied his freedom, which is my brother's, and so by doing you have denied the witness unto yours. So we lock each other. Whenever we want to condemn the other, we lock ourselves in the same thing that we want to free ourselves from. It's the same thing. It goes over and over again. Really everything around me, whether I want to believe it or not, is a reflection of the types of thoughts I'm having, not specifically, but of the types of thoughts that the world can be. It can encroach on me and damage me or hurt me and everything else. They're the types of thoughts that I have that allow the projections to fulfill that type of thought system. Anyway, I'm going to go on. Paragraph 5, lay not his guilt upon him. For his guilt lies in his secret thought that he has done this unto you. Would you then teach him he is right in his delusion? The idea that the guiltless Son of God can attack himself and make himself guilty is insane. In any form, in anyone, believe this not. For sin and condemnation are the same, and the belief in one is faith in the other, calling for punishment instead of love. Nothing can justify insanity, and to call for punishment upon yourself must be insane.
You know, Joanna and I can say that we got there in good faith, if there's such a thing. We had this little bit of money that was left over from, I don't know, my mom or something like that. I can't remember what happened. But we invested it with some character down in Fort Lauderdale who was going to basically save the world using colloidal silver.
Yeah,
I recommend you not invest with Jay down in Fort Lauderdale. But in any case, we invested in that, and this becomes a sticking point for me. It happened in India as well when I get taken to the cleaners for some sort of a misjudgment on my part, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I definitely feel like a deer in the headlights, and I was hit. And so I really want, in my mind, in the back of my mind, it's not like I brood on this or that I hold this thing, but whether it's the painter who I feel like shafted us in a sense, the painter here in town, or that guy down there in Fort Lauderdale, I keep them in a little guilty box. And I don't think about it, but I hold them there, and I know I hold them there because whenever I see this guy's vehicle in town, I sort of grumble to myself, and,
right.
and whenever I think, it's like slowly I turn, step by step, inch by inch, and I, it's a place that I have nurtured. It's a pleasure for me.
No, I know.
It's a pleasure to have. Some people do it with Hitler or with Charles Manson. I do it with Rico.
Yes.
And with Jay.
Right.
And they are my Charles Manson and my Adolf Hitler. For the way that they maligned me in my private life.
Yeah.
But I keep him on the hook. So what it's saying here is, lay not his guilt upon him, for his guilt lies in the secret thought that he has done this unto you. Jay knows he took me to the cleaners. As does Rico. They know they did, and they feel good about that. Well,
I don't know what they feel. I
know. I'm just saying. Let's just pretend they do.
Oh, okay,
I'm sure Jay does because he got a bunch of money for nothing. So anyhow, but it's up to me to get outside of that cycle. The injustice is real. Okay.
Yeah.
It's real. My ignorance is real. My guilt of being an ignoramus is real. Their guilt in being shysters is real. The lack of service and product is real. Quote unquote real. All of these things are real here. But all of that is a fear cycle and a guilt cycle. It's a guilt cycle that keeps me bound here. And it's very innocence, the fact that I can talk about it, laugh about it, and make Rico, that I can do this. These things make it attractive and as an innocent pastime to hold someone guilty.
Right.
Beware. And I'm realizing that through this line, beware.
Yeah.
There's no innocent guilt.
Right. There isn't.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of a funny paradox?
Yeah, it is a funny paradox, and it's a good statement. There is no innocent guilt. But because it will be done unto you. That which I'm condemning is going to continue the cycle so that it can happen again now, because I won't let that form go.
Well, I'm gonna take it even more immediate than that. As long as I hold Jay guilty, then every time I think of him, he's doing it to me again.
Oh, right. Yes.
So, of course.
Yes.
Every single time, it's a refresher.
Yeah.
It's a refresher again
and
also
again. It reminds you of your own
stupidity,
which keeps you in another kind of slavery.
I'm glad we agree on that.
No, because I'm saying that for myself as well, because I was just as stupid about it. But anyway, so that is keeping us in another classification that is enslaving us. And there's no innocence there. I can't find my innocence. Okay.
For sin and condemnation are the same, and the belief in one is faith in the other, calling for punishment instead of love. Okay, and these are, I guess I'm saying is like whether it's the Disney Corporation and the secret pleasure I have that they might be tanking because they're stupid movies they've put out with diversity and inclusivity? Or is it Rico and the fact that he didn't do a good job of my house? Or Jay with the money that we falsely... These are all... they hang on me. And all of them really do a kind of a damage. But the thing is, I kind of like him. It's like, oh, gee, I wonder when the next Saw movie is coming out.
God.
You know, it's like, just...
We did not watch those.
No, I haven't seen any Saw movies, but I'm just saying, though, it's not that different than nurturing an affection for Friday the 13th movies or something, just liking the ick. I wonder what ick is going to hit me now.
Yeah.
Drop that. Get past it. I'm not going to fix anything.
Not only that, but they're all in the past. And it says, release the past. Or it will happen again in the future.
And that's why it brings up sanity. Nothing can justify insanity.
Right.
And to call for punishment upon yourself must be insane.
Right.
So, that's pretty true. Paragraph 6. See no one, then, as guilty, and you will affirm the truth of guiltlessness unto yourself. In every condemnation that you offer the Son of God lies the conviction of your own guilt. If you would have the Holy Spirit make you free of it, accept his offer of atonement for all your brothers, for so you learn that it is true for you. Remember always that it is impossible to condemn the Son of God in part. Those whom you see as guilty become the witnesses to guilt in you, and you will see it there, for it is there until it is undone. Guilt is always in your mind, which has condemned itself. Project it not, for while you do, it cannot be undone. With everyone whom you release from guilt, great is the joy in heaven, where the witnesses to your fatherhood rejoice. So I would say it's a good practice for me to recognize that I do have little innocent guilty parties that are not good. They are not helping in this process.
And the social and political landscape right now is tit for tat, and this one did that, and this one did this, and they need to be just, there's so much that they make it so normal in the media scape that it seems like it's okay. And that's what's one of the weird things is that, we just buy into what is being played out after a while. And you kind of have to just remove yourself from that particular tit for tat.
It's the Colosseum. It's the Roman Colosseum.
Yeah.
It's like, bring them out there. I want to see some lions tear some flesh. Even if it's a small, innocent thing, like I get a little secret glee, as I've said, about the painter or whatever. No, there's no secret glee.
No, but people are having secret glees about everything that's happening to, different political parties and everything else. It's like, one up on that one up on that. I mean, we are just definitely living in that world.
Well, it's kind of like candy at a party. It's like you're just like, well, I had one, I had two, I had three. Well, what the heck? It's the holidays. I'll have 10.
Yeah.
You don't know when to say no until you just say no to all of them.
Right. Exactly. And just
atonement for all your brothers there.
Yes. So I'm in paragraph 7. Guilt makes you blind. For while you see one spot of guilt within you, you will not see the light. And by projecting it, the world seems dark and shrouded in your guilt. You throw a dark veil over it and cannot see it because you cannot look within. You're afraid of what you would see there, but it is not there. The thing you fear is gone. If you would look within, you would see only the atonement, shining in quiet and in peace upon the altar of your Father. And that's the thing we're the most afraid of, isn't it? That's what they say, we're afraid of the light. So when we look in, they say if we spend time in that quiet space and look in, you'll see light.
Let's talk. Guilt makes you blind. For while you see one spot of guilt within you, you will not see the light. So why is that? Why? That this is a comprehensive statement. In other words, there's no such thing as, I'm not really, I don't have an axe to grind against those people that I was talking about, but I definitely have a certain sort of a pleasure at reviewing the wound that I received at their hands, perceived or,
Right.
So that guiltiness, the fact that that I'm victimized in some degree by something somewhere, makes me blind. Do you have any insight on that?
Well, the thing of it is that so long as we have a condemnation, I will make myself guilty. And so long as I carry guilt aligns with fear. And fear and love are mutually exclusive. Where you experience fear, you cannot experience love. And when you experience love, you cannot experience fear. So love goes with light. And so when you experience light, you cannot see the darkness.
There's the lesson, in my defenselessness, my safety lies.
Yes.
So guilt is an attack.
Yes.
So with these people I'm talking about, might be innocent jousting in my mind, obviously in my mind, but it is an attack.
Yeah.
It might just be of such a low order that I let it just kind of fester and lay there. And as a festering thing that I have not dealt with and that I don't take seriously, I would argue easily that my own guilt, because of that, I'm primed to become guilty of something, and that others are primed to receive my condemnation for something because I've nurtured that small bit of stuff. It's like keep the ground tilled, so it's always ready for a serious occasion.
Right.
Now, the other thing about this paragraph that I thought was Jesus mentions that when there's the atonement and when I forgive, that there will be a veil of light thrown around the sonship, the whole sonship, and the world which would condemn, the world which would find guilty. There's a light, sort of a blanket. Yeah. So in a sense, this is a parallel. Guilt makes me blind to God's plan for salvation and to the sonship and to my brotherhood.
And to your recognition that you're at one with
and
them.
It's burdensome.
Yeah.
It's a burden. And at the same time is that I'm seeing here that guilt makes me blind. But there's another kind of blindness to the world that happens when you're calling on the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit doesn't keep me in the fear-based, guilt-based system.
Right, it doesn't.
If I don't hold people culpable, if I don't hold them guilty, and I understand this process, and I participate, and I let Rico off the hook, and Jay, etc., and wherever I find it, I'm restless to let go of those guilts and those attacks. The world becomes a better place. It feels better. It's lighter. It's brighter. It's easier. And I'm going to say that some of that is that blanket of light that's thrown by the Holy Spirit so that we have benefit, and we're not just assailed by the guilty world until every single guilty person's off the hook. Well, when you let it go,
you're lightened along immediately, and your light then gets reflected back.
Right.
So as soon as we stop carrying those grudges or condemnations or whatever else, I mean, that's what in the Catholic Church is supposed to be what penance is for. The
lightning.
Is that you find out what you've been carrying and you say, I will let this go and let it literally go.
Paragraph 8.
Yeah, let's go to paragraph 8. Yeah.
Do not be afraid to look within. The ego tells you all is black with guilt within you and bids you not to look. Instead, it bids you look upon your brothers and see the guilt in them. Yet this you cannot do without remaining blind. For those who see their brothers in the dark, and guilty in the dark in which they shroud them, are too afraid to look upon the light within. Within you is not what you believe is there, and what you put your faith in. Within you is the holy sign of perfect faith your Father has in you. He does not value you as you do. He knows himself and knows the truth in you. He knows there's no difference, for he knows not of differences. Can you see guilt where God knows there is perfect innocence? You can deny his knowledge, but you cannot change it. Look then upon the light he placed within you, and learn that what you feared was there has been replaced with love. So I just would like to spend a minute talking about do not be afraid to look within. Of course, anybody who's got a meditation practice says, oh yeah, no, I go in, I'm always going in there.
Yeah.
Then the ego tells you all is black with guilt within you and bids you not to look. Do you feel that?
Well, the thing of it is that what I have to ask myself, as I'm looking within is, do I feel at peace with myself? And if not, why am I not at peace? And there's usually something, perturbation, some kind of anxiety, some kind of something's running me. And so, and it would, if I was to really name it, it's going to be about a person, a situation, or whatever, or that I'm feeling less than for some reason, something I did, something I said. And so the guilt would be there. And that would prevent me from seeing the light within, because I'll own my guilt way more quickly than I'll own my innocence, because that's what's taught here. We're all taught that pattern of attack, defend, guilty, innocent, and innocence is, temporary, because guilt is going to return in this world, because that's the way it works here.
Well, there's also, and I've mentioned this before, there's so many of these vectors from the ego's viewpoint in the ego's world that work together, guilt and smallness as well.
Mm-hmm.
I know that in my own life and in I think other people, there's a commitment to remaining small in a sense.
Right.
Because of this, I'm afraid of, I want to be a good person, so if you're going to be a good person, you better be small. Make the target as small as possible. You have no intention of getting away from the ego, but you want to give as little fuel as possible, so you take up as little space as possible. And so there's a fear of the light within.
Once awareness of the light within is there, Jesus says, take the bushel basket off. You're going to take the lamp and put it up on a lamppost so that it can shine upon your brothers, and then it will shine even greater upon yourself. And you'll remember your grandeur, not your grandiosity.
There's an innocent form of self-deprecation. It seems innocent enough. It's a false humility. There's the innocent sense of holding people guilty, like I mentioned. And it's all the mediocre life. I take that all as just good fun. It's all innocent. It doesn't really affect anything. But you're not saving the world.
No.
Because there needs to be the expansion. There needs to be allowing God to do his work. And God does his work unequivocally. Right. As I said, God knows no differences. Mm-hmm. God knows no order of difficulty. Mm-hmm. And so to the degree that I keep a lid on myself, allowing myself to hold people guilty, allowing myself to stay small so that all of my issues stay little. And if they stay little, they stay insignificant. And if they stay insignificant, that's as good as innocence gets here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And also, so long as we want to play that game, we're playing within the laws of the ego, and we'll remain trapped and enslaved in our own mindscape that has not put value on the light within. It's put value on the guilt that I think I have or my brother has, which then reflects back that I have it, So, and that will keep me in the dark. As you read before, it'll keep me blind. And if I want to see with the light, I have to be willing to let go of those things that we talked about. All those little condemnations of self and other, even if it's in innocent fun, it says don't play there. Just don't play that game, because you still are in...
If you play a little of the ego's game, you're playing all of the ego's game.
Yeah, you're playing all of it. And it's a huge kind of revelation to the mind to realize that, because then it's like the things that, we like to watch, like I said, with comedy and stuff like that, certain people, it's like, oh, look they're picking on so-and-so. Let's go listen to that.
Right.
Well, then we're buying into it. And I have to be honest about it, So my little innocent, quote, pleasures about watching them,
Yeah, somebody getting trashed in the media.
Yeah, somebody getting trashed in the media is perpetuating the very thing that I hate, the very thing that I don't want in my life. And that's, I have to own that.
So if you stay small enough, you definitely won't have to worry about it. The reason I'm harping on staying small at the moment is it says here that guilt is like the main deal. So this is the first time we've been introduced in a big way to guilt as a topic.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as innocent guilt, partial guilt. You're either all in or you're not.
Yeah. And
if we want to heal the world, you have to let go of guilt, and you have to understand this and take, and I'm talking to myself, take no, quote unquote, innocent pleasure in keeping people guilty.
Right.
Including myself.
Mm-hmm. Including myself. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Well, there we go.
Thanks.
Thank you.